Thank you very much for being here. I'd like to introduce you Michael LaTorra. He's going to give a talk titled Re-Engineering Reincarnation. And I understand he will mention many interesting things, including Buddhist and related cosmologies. Hello, Mike. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Guyo. Thank you for inviting me and for hosting this.
I really look forward
I would like
to
to,
listening. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Continue.
yes, I'd like to thank everyone involved in this project of this conference, and I hope that someday we will all meet in person.
I hope so too. Okay, I'm now going to put your PowerPoint presentation on, and you have, as soon as I get this thing on the screen, you have the floor. Okay, seems that this doesn't want to go on the screen. Here we go. You have the floor, Mike.
Thank you. Re-engineering, the reality of rebirth and how it might be managed is the subject of my talk. And I am of two minds about this. I would like to give you a precise, detailed technical explanation of the mechanisms by which the process of reincarnation occurs. I would like to tell you how and why an individual dies in one life is incarnated into a particular set of circumstances and conditions in life. Furthermore, I would like to tell you how this process can be precisely controlled so that reincarnation can be guided. I cannot. The process of reincarnation is not that well understood. There is ample evidence that reincarnation is real. There is also evidence that some individuals can exert at least partial control over the reincarnation process in their own case. However, I do not know of any detailed technical explanation of how reincarnation operates and how it may be controlled. What I do know is the evidence from Tibetism, from the Hindu tradition and others about highly advanced spiritual people who can choose the circumstances of their rebirth if they choose to be reborn at all. I also know about the evidence from American researchers into cases of reincarnation among ordinary non-spiritual people. These two sets of evidence indicate that reincarnation is real and that it may be controlled. Some of you listening to my talk may doubt the reality of reincarnation. If you are such a person, please be patient and bear with me. In the final part of my talk, I will briefly discuss how reincarnation could be invented even if it did not already exist. In most cases, reincarnation happens in an almost mechanical fashion. The desires and aversions of one life cause rebirth in a subsequent life. Advanced beings reincarnate by choice, not by chance. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition depends on reincarnation for its top religious leaders, such as the Dalai Lama, the Panchen Lama, the Karmapa. In discussing reincarnation, we have to have some idea of the greater realm in which we exist, the Earth plane being a small part of that. So we'll look at models of cosmic domain. Many of the following slides have very actually need to read. I will read the most important parts. The Buddhist cosmology divides the cosmic domain into three broad realms: the sense sphere realm, the fine material realm, and the immaterial realm. Each of these three realms is further divided into several subsidiary planes for a total of 31 planes of existence. Each plane is not to be thought of as a single planet, but more like an entire universe. The sense sphere realm has 11 planes. Again, we do not need to go into the details here. I included a lot of text, which is probably too small for you to read, just to give you some idea of the detail with which this cosmology has been described by Buddhists over the last 2,500 years. Beyond the sense sphere realm, there is a fine material realm. Here there is no gross matter. Only finer material forms. Existence is more pleasant, more blissful. The lower realms include more suffering. Beyond the fine material realm, the next realm is the immaterial realm. Here there is mind only, no materiality, and lifespans are enormously long. The experiences of those incarnated on this realm also correspond to experiences that can be attained through meditative disciplines. These four planes correspond to the four jhanas of immaterial states in the Buddhist meditation practices. And these four are called infinite space, infinite mind, nothingness, and neither perception nor yet non-perception. The Buddhist cosmology also includes a teaching about the values of these different planes of existence. None of those worlds, even the ones that are very blissful, is true heaven or ultimate perfect domain. Life in all of the cosmic worlds arises due to conditional factors, karma. When those conditions no longer attain, life ceases there. Life experience in the cosmic domain is impermanent, not fully satisfactory, and it lacks essential being with a capital B. This is the critique made by the Buddha. I'm going to read this entire paragraph because it summarizes the main points. This was written by Bhikkhu Bodhi in his introduction to the middle-length discourses of the Buddha. He writes, in Buddhist cosmology, existence in every realm, being the product of kama, or karma, if you will, with a finite potency, is necessarily permanent. Beings take rebirth in accordance with their deeds, and then, when the generative karma has spent its force, they pass away to take rebirth elsewhere, as determined by still another karma that has found the opportunity to ripen. Hence the torments of hell, as well as the bliss of heaven, relative heaven, no matter how long they may last, are bound to pass. It does not locate the final goal of his teaching anywhere conditional worlds. He guides those who are still tender to aspire for a heavenly birth in one of those higher realms. He teaches them the lines of conduct that conduce to the fulfillment. But for those whose faculties are mature and who can grasp the unsatisfactory nature of everything conditioned. He urges determined effort to put an end to wandering in samsara, that is the conditional realms, and to reach nirvana, which transcends all planes of being in the cosmic domain. Now I'd like to look at how this same information is viewed by my guru, Avatar Adidas Samraj, who was born in the United States in 1939 with the birth name Franklin Jones. In the 1960s, he traveled to India, became a disciple of Swami Muktananda, and was given the name Dayanananda and authorized to teach. Later, in the late 1970s, he took the name Adida.
Welcome back, Mike. We had a little internet connection problem, and Michael was lost in connection. But now we're going to restart from where we were. So I'm going to put the last view graph that Mike was commenting, and I'm going to ask you to restart from this one, which is the 7 stages of life. Mike, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. So, Adida's 7 stages of life framework explains development, ordinary life, first 3 stages, which are equivalent to childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, the physical development, socialization, and then mental development. Beyond that are 3 stages, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, of spiritual development, which is rare in our world. The divine communion or spiritualization, spiritual ascent, these are rising into the subtle domains, and causal, which is abiding in consciousness, the 6th. The 7th, divine enlightenment, is everything and includes all the other stages. The cosmos of Adida Samraj is shown in this image, which I will explain further. The cosmic mandala, Adida calls it, a series of concentric planes or spheres that are seen during the death transition or in visionary experiences during life. The red realms of existence are lower or more gross than the human. Lower forms of life. These realms, all of them that are being described here, should not be thought of as an individual planet or place such as that, but more like an entire universe or many universes of many different worlds that exist at a particular level or plane. The silvery white is the astral realm. Beyond that, there is a small dark blue or black empty space between the higher astral planes and the subtle realms. The brilliant blue subtle planes or mental planes have no material correspondence to them, as we saw in the Buddhist cosmology, which does map to the cosmos as Adida describes it. Adida has spoken about the subtle realms as benign places or dimensions of existence, where the sense of separate self is hardly noticed. Thus they are places of apparently limitless joy and bliss. experience in them is typically free of fear. One is freer to notice and participate in the inherent nature of existence itself, which is self-radiant, loveless, consciousness and light. The experience of pervasive and indescribable joy, love, radiance, and awareness is characteristic of the subtle realms. Yet even in the midst of such potentially magnificent experience, from the perspective of the highest realization, even these most refined states of existence, as full of joy and bliss as they may be, are still conditions of suffering or non-realization. The clear white is the radiant core of all light frequencies, often manifesting as a five-pointed star, which is the gateway between the subtle realms and the radiant transcendental being, or the divine domain, which we can think of as true heaven. Adida said, in describing what our actual experience is like, while you are alive, you make the mind, and when you die, the mind makes you. By your action, all the while now, you are putting things, so to speak, in this unconscious, this deeper personality, which is outside of the brain. You are enforcing and reinforcing patterns. You are patterning it. You are, in some sense, indulging in what is there in the unconscious, but you are also adding to it. He goes on to say, death is by no means simply a doorway to heaven. What is on your mind now when you lose physical attention? What kinds of thoughts do you have? What kinds of dreams do you have? What kinds of fears do you have? That makes your experience after death. He says, then when you die, the conscious part falls off, the physical falls off.
Welcome back again, Mike. Mike dropped off, lost in translation again. So we are going to start exactly at the same point where we stopped. Here we go with Adida Samraj. Over to you again, Mike.
Adida said, then when you die, the conscious part falls off. It is the mind realm. This is what follows life. Adida described the death process in terms of instructions for what to do. And this applies to anyone, not only to his followers. He instructed, there is a strong attractive force felt upwards. Let yourself feel that force. There is also an upward moving sound. It is an intense vibration that can be heard and that moves high above. Let yourself be drawn upward by that sound and be moved by that. Let yourself be attracted upward by that feeling of bliss. Eventually, you will see that attractive light above, the radiant white light. He continues, Hold to the center. Hold to the upward attraction. Let go of everything. Allow yourself to be attracted and drawn straight like an arrow into that white brightness, that bliss, that vibratory force or sound. Allow all sense of separateness and otherness to be dissolved above in the unconditional force of being itself, the divine self-domain. So why re-engineer reincarnation? Well, in the description and instructions that Arida gave, that I reported here, he makes it clear that our possibility after death is to go straight and above and beyond the conditional realm and enter the divine domain. Why doesn't that happen in all cases? Because we get distracted. We do not stay centered. We are distracted and diverted and pulled by our desires and also driven by our fears. Some people think of God passing judgment, but in fact, we judge ourselves. We feel we're not worthy. It's too intense. We want to hold on to things we identify with as being ourselves. And so we fall back to be reborn in one condition or another, in one of the conditional realms, in that cosmic mandala of many different levels. Why re-engineer reincarnation? First, to help the reincarnated being to avoid repeating past mistakes. We also can help the reincarnated being to resume creative endeavors. Typically, sooner or later, the reincarnated being will move into some kind of creative endeavor that picks up where they left off in a previous lifetime. The amount of time it takes to resume that could be shortened. People can be helped and directed. And finally, to help the reincarnated being to reconnect with spiritual community. This is the interest that I and some other of my fellow devotees of Adida have been taking into consideration with respect to Adidam, our spiritual community. Now, beyond that, in re-engineering reincarnation, what could we do? First, create a centralized clearinghouse of reports from families with children who remember past lives. As the work of the late psychiatrist and professor Ian Stevenson showed, most memories of past lives appear in childhood and then eventually fade as the children get older. By having a clearinghouse, we can help them while those memories are still fresh, and we can develop counseling techniques to help these children to uncover the karmic reasons for their current rebirth, which could save a lot of time, a lot of trouble, and a lot of headaches, because the tendency will be to repeat old patterns, and the necessity is to transcend those patterns, not to reinforce them. And finally, we families and spiritual communities for their ongoing growth. Excuse me. I've got to get my slides in proper order here. Okay. How to re-engineer reincarnation? First, we need to overcome our social taboos about discussing reincarnation and spirituality. We have to learn more about the subtle processes that occur after death and before rebirth. lot of information in the spiritual traditions about this, but the information tends to be colored by cultural overlays and filters. It's important to extract the essential information from those overlays and to neutralize the filters so that we have something that is truly a universal or objective description of this process. And there's a long way to go before we will have that, but the action of beginning the research and doing what I suggested needs to start now. The next point, guiding the one who is to be reborn towards an auspicious body vehicle, requires that we have knowledge of the subtle processes and that people who are advanced spiritually take it on as one of their responsibilities to help this rebirth process. This does occur and has been reported in different spiritual traditions, but it is by no means a commonly understood responsibility for the highly advanced, such that it can be spoken about in any useful way. People tend to create stories that are rather fantastical about a process that needs to be understood in more plain and simple terms. Finally, use future science and technology to create new types of incarnation vehicles. If you are one of those people I mentioned at the beginning who does not believe in reincarnation and is reluctant to be persuaded otherwise, this is for you. We have good reason to believe that our science and technology will progress to the point that we eventually understand and brains operate in great technical detail. And then, using computers, robotic bodies, and perhaps other things we have not yet developed in an even rudimentary form, we may be able to create a vehicle into which a human reincarnate being can enter. These could be completely artificial. They could be a combination of biological and mechanical or artificial, cyborg, or simply a version of the human body that has been created through bioengineering such that it is free of many of the defects we currently suffer, including a lifespan and a health span that are very much shorter than they potentially could be. And I'd like to leave you with this statement by Adidas Amraj. You are not consciously a separate entity, even though you may presume yourself to be such an entity through your usual association with experience. Conventionally, you believe that the realm wherein you are one with God is somewhere other than your present circumstance. You believe that the divine is some one else or other. You think that the divine is so profound you could not realize God except in a totally different state, circumstance, and dimension than this present one. But God is simply the shining, conscious being that is your nature at all times and under all conditions. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Mike. That was really a great talk. Now let's arrange things here a bit, and I'm going to ask you also to switch your webcam on. So let's see you. Since I'm the only one in the interactive audience in real time, I get to ask the questions and make the comments that interest me. And one of the last things that you said very much resonates with my way of thinking. That sometime in the future we might be able to take more control through scientific and technology means of the reincarnation process by engineering suitable vehicles for reincarnation, alternative to the biological body and brain that at the same time are able to say that to tune to the same frequency of the reincarnation spirit using a radio receiver metaphor, something like that. Through some technological means in the future, we might be able to facilitate and perhaps even improve upon the process that happens spontaneously in nature. And I think by saying that, you and the other followers of LaTorra are implicitly making the assumption that all these things that we are discussing, of course, are based on aspects of nature that we don't understand yet at this moment, but maybe our descendants in the future could understand better. And do you think future science might acquire an understanding of these things better than what we have at this moment?
Well, speaking for myself, not speaking on behalf of Adidam, the holy institution created by Adidam, but speaking for myself, yes, I believe that it will be possible someday to create a synthetic substrate, robotic, computer, or perhaps otherwise, even combination of things that create a virtual world that meet some criteria, the absolutely essential criteria by which a reincarnating being or entity or bundle of processes can acquire control of or reincarnate into this vehicle. Currently, with our robots, there is a range of people find acceptable and comfortable in dealing with this being that looks somewhat human. There are, or at least somewhat alive. There are the robotic pets, which don't look human. There are the very artificial looking robots, very metallic or plastic. And then moving towards something that looks human, there is the problem of the uncanny valley, something that looks close to human, but still in some disturbing way is definitely not human. The development of the technology I was describing, such that a being could reincarnate. Before we reach that point where into an artificial being, artificial substrate, we may discover an uncanny valley that is something like the zombie problem. It's a programmed entity. It seems to be aware, but yet in some crucial ways it fails to convince, fails to pass the Turing test consistently with standard developed. But along the way, I am issuing this warning that we will probably have some issues to deal with, some problems to solve to get beyond an uncanny valley so that we feel that the entity, the being, the robotic or artificial life form, truly is equivalent to human and perhaps is identifiable as the continuation of a previously living human who had died and is now reincarnated in this new vehicle.
I think I have lost your voice at this moment. Are you still hearing me?
I'm hearing you. My microphone is on, but
Yeah.
your webcam is not showing.
Right. Well, it does show here. You still have a little internet connection speed problem.
Ah, there you are.
Yeah, I see both webcams fine. Yeah, may have an uncanny valley problem indeed, but let's forget for a while that our descendants could be able to improve the spontaneous mechanism of reincarnation with science and engineering. Let's stay with the spontaneous mechanism of reincarnation as it exists now in the universe, has existed for a very long time before. That's something we discussed in the past already, and is one of the reasons for which people from a Western background find difficult to be enthusiastic about Buddhist and Eastern concepts of afterlife. This difficulty is the fact that one is normally reincarnated without remembering the past life. That's the difference between reincarnation and resurrection. Resurrections would mean that you remember the person that you were before, but with reincarnation, we normally think that one has to start from a blank slate. But you mentioned that some people, especially children, are able to remember something of previous lives. What I'm wondering is that, well, if someone can remember, it seems to mean that everybody could remember in principle, but what happens in practice is that some people remember and some don't. Anything, any kind of meditation-like mental discipline that one could do to improve one's ability to remember previous lives.
I am not aware of that, although I certainly believe it could exist. Um, the underlying question is what would be the value of remembering a previous life in detail? In the Buddha's story, his report of his own enlightenment, one of the things occurred immediately before his enlightenment was remembering all of his past lives. I think the lesson to learn from this is not that we need to do that, but that the patterns that we tend to repeat are the lessons of those past lives. Knowing the past lives in detail isn't required. What is required is to understand the patterns, and that can be done in the current lifetime through careful observation. In my own case, my own experience of meditation, I've become acutely aware of my tendency to do certain types of things, to behave in a certain way, to react in a certain way, to be drawn towards certain things and repulsed by others. And these patterns occur at different levels of scale. So there are large scale events that happen in life over the course of weeks and months, and there are very small scale ones that happen over the course of a few hours, and there are small scale ones that have to do with simply moving objects around in space, and what we do when, the way you put away your clothes. I mean, it's very small, and I've become acutely aware of my particular patterning. Being aware of the patterning is not the entire goal here, but it happens along the way of becoming more consciously aware of what we tend to do, and then practicing in a spiritual sense the disciplines that help us to transcend, to let go of those patterns. The patterns only continue when we reinforce them. The rule of thumb is whatever is not used becomes obsolete. So if we stop reinforcing the patterns, they begin to lose their force. And it becomes progressively easier to let go of more and more and more of these attachments. I'd like to add here with respect to future technology. Of creating a long-lived vehicle for reincarnation, a longer-lived one, longer than a typical human lifespan, context where understanding of reincarnation and patterning and spiritual practice is very broad and easily available. In such a world, it should be possible to learn a lot about one's patterns and transcend many more of them in a single incarnation, a single lifetime, than we can do now. I would guess, this is purely a speculation, but I suspect that that last several centuries, we may obviate, make unnecessary the requirement for further incarnations, and could transcend the cosmic domain and divine domain, as Adida describes it.
Right. Now, you used many times expression like letting go of attachment, achieving detachment, uh, transcending the patterns that make your life now. But I'm thinking, what if I don't want to let go? What do I mean? I mean that there are some patterns in my life that I like. For example, I like the pattern of loving my wife, my daughter, family, and my friends very much. I don't want to let go of that specific pattern in my next incarnations, and I'd like to be exactly with the same people that I have loved in this incarnation. And I would like to remember the fact that I loved them in my previous life. This is the first part of my question, and the second part, which is very much related, is that suppose at one moment, after many lifetimes, I could be able to escape the cycle, stopping, reincarnating over and over again. And here the question that I think anyone who comes from a Western cultural background ask is why should I want to do that? Should I want to let go what is in for me when I achieve what some call nirvana? Why is that something good?
Okay, those are two excellent questions. Beginning with your first, I'm glad that the example you gave of patterns that you would like to continue is loving your daughter, your family, your friends. The characteristic of love that is most important in this regard is that we put our loved ones before ourselves. We are willing to sacrifice our preferences, sometimes in an extreme circumstance, even our lives, to save our loved ones. Love, thus, is self-transcending. It is letting go to an attachment to our preferences, or perhaps even our life, for the sake of the ones we love. This is why love is the most direct path to self-transcendence, even to transcending the entirety of rebirth. In the Hindu tradition, the practice of bhakti, or devotion, is exactly this path, the path of devotion and love to God, to the divine as it can be incarnated in the form of a great spiritual teacher. Your second question about the Western perspective on reincarnation being different is also very apt. Let's say there's a Westerner and there's an Easterner, the great Occident and the Orient. The idea of reincarnation, to come back and enjoy the pleasures of life, seems very appealing to Westerners. They can have more of all the things we enjoy. From the Oriental point of view, or the Eastern point of view, reincarnation has pleasures mixed with pain, and as the Buddha described it, we need to become aware that in our pleasures there are seeds of dissatisfaction. The pleasures we enjoy are limited in duration. Sometimes they are pleasures that we anticipate with great happiness, but once we obtain them, they are not quite as good as we expected them to be. And even in the fullness of enjoying some physical pleasure, there is limitation due to the physical, or the physics of it. So our pleasures are impermanent, not fully satisfactory. And the third point that is made is that ultimate being is not contained in experience. Ultimate being exists prior to and beyond valida of many great teachers is that we do not need to cut out the pleasures, but we need to recognize their limitations. Once we recognize their limitations, we do not cling to them so tightly. Therefore, they can actually be enjoyed for what they are, and we do not expect more from them than they can really deliver.
I think it does take a lot of mental discipline to do that. I think you will agree with me that that's difficult for most people from a Western cultural background, because our reaction when we have something that is good is to want more and more of that. It's very difficult to let go of that. Anyway, I think I have one last question to which I would like to be able to answer that myself. I'm not able to. I have been thinking about that all the time for the last couple of years. I don't think you will be able to answer either. I'm sure you have been thinking about that as well. We come from a scientific background, and for us it's difficult to take seriously things that seem completely divorced from our scientific knowledge. We want to make some kind of connection in these two components of our mental world. I think I'll just wait for Mike to come back. Mike, are you still here?
I can hear you, but I'm seeing that.
Right,
Can
I
you hear
see.
me?
So, yes, I can hear you, and your video has disappeared. So perhaps, well, as soon as the video comes back, I will put it on the screen. However, what I wanted to arrive at is that what do you think about possible physical mechanisms for all the things that we are discussing? Of course, if reincarnation is real, it's not something that can be described by the science that we know. But do you have any intuition, imagination about some kind of science that we don't know yet in detail, but perhaps we can imagine from a very rough qualitative point of view that could make sense of the physics of reincarnation?
There's no video, but I can speak to that
Okay.
question. I only have some vague ideas. I believe that there are energies not detectable by our current equipment, that is, our machines, but that are perhaps indicated by events that seem to be random, but in reality are occurring according to some influence that we cannot currently detect. So synchronicities that occur and are significant in someone's life Um, they're the sort of things that people talk about when they say that they had something that seemed like a communication from a deceased loved one. Family member or spouse, child, instances, but they're of great significance to the person that happened to. There's a man named John Horgan who teaches at a college and has a blog in Scientific American, and he's basically skeptical of such things, but he is honest enough to report that one happened to him and his wife after her father passed. And this included several anomalous events, the most significant of which it was described in his blog, and I don't want to try and repeat it all from memory, but one event was a battery-operated radio that should not have been operating, turned itself on, and a song was playing that was of great emotional significance to the family. Um, so I think that there are energies, perhaps someday we will be able to detect with our equipment, not simply our human senses. And at this point, the only evidence for them is in the form of these anomalous events.
Yes. Okay, that was a lot of food for thought. Perhaps would put your video on again to wave goodbye to the audience. Let's see if it works.
Okay, let's see if this works. I'm re-enabling. Ah, good.
Now, things coming on. It was really great talking to you. I heard a previous version of the same talk a couple of years ago at the Vermont Transhumanist Association conference in Salt Lake City. In fact, now I got to ask some of the questions that I didn't ask that time. Are you going to the MTA conference this year?
I can't do that because of my duty, my obligation here. I am the full-time caregiver of my elderly mother, who's 94 years old. She just came back from 6 days in the hospital, and I can't get away for enough time to attend the conference.
And in fact, I'd like to end this video recording by making my best wishes to your mother. I believe she's 94, isn't she? And
That is
that's
correct.
good, and I hope she will fully recover and she will get to enjoy many, many more years of this beautiful life before the next
Thank
one,
you.
and then the next one all over again. Thank you very much for being with us, Mike, and see you soon.